Tampa Bay Rowdies, who have made a huge upset.
Your 2021 Eastern Conference champion.
A chance play to go! Oh, that is a delicious goal for Tampa Bay.
And now, you're tuned into Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I am here tonight, as I am every week, with my usual co-host Carlos to do what we usually do, cover the Rowdies. Unfortunately, though, Carlos, we are in a bit of a bind here because the Rowdies have given us a game to review, but as I'm sure most people watching will know by now, they have not given us a game to preview. So that is our bind, and we will have to work around it. Right now, we're going to be talking a little bit about the playoffs without the Tampa Bay Rowdies, unfortunately. There's actually a good bit to go over once we get to the extra time segment because of specifically Rowdies players, and we're going to talk about that too. But yeah, it'll be an interesting episode for us and hopefully an interesting episode for everybody listening to kind of take in the season that was. This is not the whole review. We're only going to be doing a review of this particular game and then talking about, like I said, playoffs and two individual players, I suppose. But point is that we're going to get into a bigger season review as we go through it and talk about how the playoffs stand in here. And ultimately, I guess we could talk about USL League One even, but there's still stuff to talk about even after the season has ended for your particular club. Anyone out there who follows the USL knows that there are still storylines that are quite worthy of coverage and some weird things going on at any given time. So that'll be our game plan for the rest of the year, I suppose. In the meantime, Carlos, how are you doing? Because it is a Tuesday night, and that's what we usually start with.
James, you're right. It's a Tuesday evening. It's too cold for my liking right now in Arlington, Virginia. I work from home a lot. I spent the afternoon working from a Starbucks down the street, thinking that it would be a good idea to throw in a heavy hoodie, work outside for a little bit. I lasted about an hour. It was too cold and windy. And I made my way back here into my cozy studio. I'd be happier if results, went a different way this past weekend. It is what it is. It's weird to think about playoffs without the Rowdies. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, like you said, break down this game from this past weekend. There's so much off season to talk about the season as a whole. I think there's a lot to reflect on, a lot to learn from collectively, as a club, as fans, as a podcast, James. I think everyone learned a little bit about themselves this season. So it'll be a lot of time to recap and reflect. For now, I'm in a weird way excited to talk about what was an interesting game. I think a little boring, maybe, but an interesting game. I'm more excited to talk about two really, really great Rowdy legends who closed their career with us this past weekend. So, James, I think this will be a good podcast. Like you said, season's over, but there's still a lot to talk about. And like I said, there's so much to talk about from this season. Even if you think it's worth just, turning the page and looking ahead to next year, I think we can spend a lot of time talking about a lot this year. Players, coaches, attendances, James. Like there was a lot of themes this year. For all intents and purposes, though, we'll narrow it down to this one game for now. James, how are you doing before we jump into this Detroit City matchup that we had this past weekend?
I'm doing well. My wife and I were up in Atlanta this past weekend, or the Atlanta area, and so I don't have the best view of how this particular game went. Obviously, I did what reading I could, watch the highlights, what have you. And I'll be offering my thoughts such as they are, but they are not going to be as, I guess, exhaustive as they might otherwise be. So Carlos, our ever fearless other leader, will be here to lead us through the rest of the show, and in particular through the rest of the review of this game against Detroit City, which, as far as I can tell from everything, it just kind of played out, kind of went out with a whimper, this one. So I guess that's kind of the way that the whole season was, and that's kind of where I was leaning towards us reviewing this particular game and comparing it to the rest of the season. So yeah, we've got that much to go through eventually in this episode, and like I said, it won't be the most fun, but I think that it is necessary for everybody to understand where things are, and then once we get into a larger season review, maybe we can talk about the things that we need to see change, so that, of course, this doesn't happen again, and the Rowdies ultimately do have a chance to make the playoffs, like everybody thought they did ahead of the 2025 campaign. So yeah, there we go. Let's get into it. Rowdies drew 1-1 against Detroit City. We're out of the playoffs, and that is a wrap on the 2025 season in Tampa Bay specifically. Tampa Bay Sun continue, as do the Bucks. Lightning, Rays are out. Okay,
yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm keeping up with it. And
USF football having a great year. Throw that in there too.
I was going to say, yeah, there's Bulls coverage going on at the RBLR studio. So just keep that in mind. The RBLR studio that is several people's houses, apparently. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube or any major podcast platform. And of course, please follow us on all your social medias, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, whatever, at RBLR Sports. Carlos, let's do the quick review here, and then we'll talk about the larger game as it was against Detroit City.
James, in front of a crowd of 7,326 Rowdies fans, actually maybe 5 or 6 Detroit City fans based on what I saw on the broadcast. There's a handful. The only sellout crowd of the season, in a season where attendance fell off a cliff in the middle portion of the year. The Rowdies ended the year on a good note, at least in the stands. The folks on the field, nothing new here. Bill Hamid in net, Castellanos in the back line, with Fernandes Lasso making his final professional appearance. Lawrence White making up the last of that back line. Juan Carlos Azocar was your right wing back again. Crisostomo and Mendez in the midfield, with Joey Skinner starting out at the left wing back spot, again getting another start after Bodley seemingly picked up some sort of injury. Paul Marie was your attacking mid behind Manu Arteaga and Wubens Pasillas. James, this game was one that you would have expected to be maybe more intense than it was. Maybe that's not a good way to describe it. You can certainly feel the tension. You can certainly feel the intensity. There was a lot of physicality, but it wasn't the most well played on our part. We didn't really throw at the kitchen sink, let's say, at the attack until the end of the game. We actually started a bit lethargic. Nothing really to show for the Rowdies' attack in that first half. It was obviously 0-0 at halftime. Detroit wasn't playing a particularly fiery game either, but they certainly had the better of the chances throughout the majority of this game. Eventually, that would work in their favor as LaFleur gets the opening goal in the 58th minute. Again, they would control a majority of this game after that, not in a particularly dominating way, but doing just enough to keep the Rowdies out of any sort of dangerous opportunities. That is until the 81st minute, when Wubens Pasillas, who had been on a tear on the back end of this year, gets his goal in the 81st minute. James, after that, you would finally start to see the Rowdies start to pour on a bit of pressure on this Detroit City squad. Obviously, the intensity ramping up when you realize, and it becomes real, that there's only 9 minutes left in your season. Fernandes Lasso, I noted before we started recording this podcast, Fernandes Lasso ended up being an additional striker on the back end of this game, which was a really fun way to see him end his career, if nothing else, going after every ball in the air and in looking for that last goal in any way possible. Leo Fernandes, of course, gets subbed into this game on the back end as well. Actually had a pretty good look from that left side. And for a brief moment, I thought he had the clearest of chances, but unfortunately, his shot goes just wide, and we aren't able to take the lead on his opportunity. Nothing particularly of note in the attack at the end of this game either. Rowdy's just controlling the ball, throwing crosses into the box inefficiently. The intensity was certainly there on the back end of this game, but maybe not at the start. So Rowdies would go on to draw this one 1-1 against Detroit City in a, I don't know if heartbreaker is the right word, based on where we were this year, right? Maybe you're a little apathetic about not making the playoffs at this point. So I won't call it a heartbreaker necessarily, at least for me personally. But the end of the season, Fernandes Lasso and Leo Fernandes looks as you would expect them to look after a long career with the Rowdies for both of them. You could tell the kind of finality of it really hits them. So a great wholesome moment seeing them, giving their respect to the fans and the fans giving that energy back on the back end of this game was really, really, really touched by all of that. And I'm glad the ESPN Plus broadcast stayed with it for a while. If you were watching at home, you would have seen what I saw. They had kind of like a dual box action with both of them, following both those players for the last 10 minutes after the game ended. So really, really cool to see that. A shout out to them. We'll talk about them later as well. But the Rowdies, James, as you described, went out with maybe what we can describe as a whimper. Unfortunate result. The result actually went our way in the Indy Orange County game, to rub in, what's the saying there? To add a insult to injury, let's say. Of course, if the Rowdies won this one by 2, with that result, we would have been into the playoffs. But alas, we didn't get to the point where that would even matter. So much to talk about in this game, so much to talk about this season. It's really kind of a funny position to start talking about individual player performances.
Right.
And the reality is we don't really know who's going to be back next year.
Exactly.
We're going to be talking about, Rubens Macias, Aloni, Paul Marie, Aloni, right? Lasso retiring, Fernandes retiring, Hamid, who knows? He's on the older side. Maybe he ends up, I don't know. I'm not saying he's retiring. I'm just throwing that out there as well. We don't know who is coming back next year. So we'll spend the next few minutes talking about this game, talking about these performances, but it's a weird feeling having to talk about this when at the end of the day, does it really matter? I'm not sure. Standings update. With that result, Detroit City was able to make the playoffs. Indy, with their loss out west, is out. So Indy in 9th place, Rowdies in 10th place, and of course Detroit getting that last 8th place playoff spot. That's how the season ends in the East. Louisville City in 1st place, Charleston Battery 2nd, North Carolina, Hartford, Pittsburgh, Loudoun, Rhode Island, and Detroit City are your playoff teams. Out west, it's Tulsa, Sacramento, New Mexico, El Paso, Phoenix Rising, San Antonio, Orange County, and Colorado Springs making up your playoff teams for the Western Conference. There'll be some good games in the playoffs. We can talk about this in a little bit as well. There's some cool storylines. Of course, Neil Collins playing ball at Sacramento. There's a lot to talk about there as well. But for the sake of wrapping up the 2025 Rowdy season, James, without doing a full season review, without talking about, how Rubens Macias did over the course of 2025, without talking about how Lawrence White did over the entirety of 2025, let's talk about this one match and do one last Rowdies review for 2025. James, I know you didn't have a chance to see the entirety of the game in your travels and everything. Initial thoughts on these 90-plus minutes. After going back, seeing the recap, the highlights, the goals, the initial thoughts of James Knowles on the final 90 minutes of the Rowdies 2025 season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Rowdies had the right lineup out there. I think that what we've seen so far over the last 2-3 months, let's say, This is probably the best 11 that they had available to them at the time. So I can't complain about specifically who was out there. And if you look at the bench too, I don't think that there was anybody that could have contributed from the start. Leo Fernandes came on later. We're going to talk about that obviously once we get farther on in the show, but he should not have been starting. He has barely been available, unfortunately, and that's obviously part of the problem here with Leo Fernandes. But yeah, it was the best that we could have hoped for from the beginning. But yeah, I don't know. It was not a strong attacking performance overall. Eureka was there and he did the post game press conference, and I think that when he was talking to Dominic Casciato, the coach, obviously he said that, or the coach said that it was possible that the occasion got to the players here, and that ultimately they weren't exactly on their game the way that anybody would have expected them to be. So if you think about, like, let's say the intensity level being higher, the passes being crisper, let's talk about the players just being a little bit more quick with their thinking, and okay, I've received the ball here, I know that my next step is to put it there, that kind of stuff. I think that was all lacking. So it's possibly the case that the team did just kind of fell apart, specifically with the weight of this game on them. So yeah, I don't know. It was unfortunate to see that. I guess in the game where it would have mattered most, obviously, the game where we were up against the wall, and just as you mentioned previously, Carlos, afterwards, actually, the results did go our way, but we didn't do what we needed to do. And that was something that you and I talked about. We can hope for whatever to happen out West, but the Rowdies still need to do their thing first. They need to get a win, and more than likely, of course, by a couple of goals. Well, we didn't score our first goal until after the 80th minute, and obviously by then Detroit City had scored 2. So what are you going to say? It's that's just not good enough. I think even if it were 0-0 at 80 minutes and we scored then, are we going to get another one? Did it really look like it at that point? Fernandes Lasso was playing up top, so yeah, you do have that extra body, you do have that extra height, but yeah, I can't say that over on the basis of this particular game, did the Rowdies deserve to be in the playoff race? Did they deserve to be in that position where Detroit City currently are, and obviously ultimately will be playing Louisville City? We'll talk about the playoff lineup as well later on, but did they? I don't think so, unfortunately. This is the one where it mattered most in 2025, because this is the situation that we put ourselves in. And it reminded me of we've had a couple of good performances, but this one reminded me that the vast majority of performances over the course of the season were low intensity. They were not crisp in passing and execution, and players weren't always doing exactly what we needed them to do in the most important moments.
Yeah. Looking back on another screen, I'm just, watching the highlights again. And first thing my eye is drawn to before even, the play on the field. Well, I say before even the play on the field, like there was a lot going on the field. Like there wasn't, is kind of my point, right? Is how full the stands were. And again, that was really cool to see. With the season we've had, I know there's fireworks at the end of this game, so that draws, the more family-oriented casual crowd in the St. Pete area. But we've had several firework nights this year, and we've been more often than not in the 4,000s when it comes to attendance, which isn't the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Like it's just not. It hasn't been for a lot of years, right? For the last several years, it's 5,000-6,000 a game, right? 6,000 more often than not. So it was really cool to see that. I'll mention that again because I think it's worth it, right? That in that side of things, we ended positively. full crowd to see Forrest and Leo's last game, to enjoy the fireworks together, to get one more game in at Al Lang Stadium until, March or April of 2026. That was really nice. That was great. I have loved it. Ralph's Mob was into it still, like the supporter section was nice and full, which looks so much better on TV than when, there's a lot of gaps and you see kind of just the empty space there. Like, that was awesome. So that deserves the biggest shout out more than anything, right? More than anything on the field. Great. On the field, James, it was honestly like, and this is obviously a game that I, clear my evening for. Like, obviously I'm going to sit down and watch the entirety of the game. If it wasn't such a big game in terms of trying to actually get into the playoffs, I would have probably turned it off and like gone to a bar with my friends or something. Like, it was a boring game. It wasn't
I
a good
understand
game.
I understand the idea behind that with the way that everything played out.
Yeah, I mean, it was a boring game. It was, Detroit gets their first goal, and for the record, Detroit's not that great of a team. They didn't play well. Frankly, they're gonna lose by 3 against Louisville. Like, Louisville is really good. Detroit and the Rowdies and Indy, like, we're all 3 of us, I think we're on the same level, and any one of us that got into that last playoff spot, I think is going to go get slaughtered by Louisville. Louisville's playing insane right now. By the way, broke the record for like points per game this season. Crazy. That being said, and it's not to like, crap on Detroit or anything. I'm just, what I'm trying to say is that it was also a boring game because they didn't really do anything particularly interesting. Their attack wasn't anything special. Their goal of the game was, took a deflection, right? It was a pretty lucky shot from LaFleur, who kind of just sends what would otherwise be a pretty easy save for Hamid into a sliding lasso. So it takes a weird bounce and sneaks into the far post. Ridiculous. I mean, a silly goal, really. And one that, for me, extinguished any chance at the playoffs in that moment, just based on what I saw in the 16 minutes before that, right? Nothing going. Woobs isn't, himself in the Woobs we've seen in the last few games, who just kind of makes goals happen out of nowhere. Yeah. That is until, later on in the game when he actually does get that goal. Arteaga is quiet, who's usually, a passionate, fiery guy. The whole team is just a little out of it, right? And it's unfortunate that in Lasso's last game, it's a deflection off of him that actually sneaks into the net for Detroit.
Yeah.
You could tell he was just kind of like bummed out, It's hard. It's hard to bounce back from that, especially when you haven't really proven yourself in the first hour of the game that there's a chance for you to score a goal. After that goal goes in for Detroit, for me, we were pretty much done, right? Yeah. I mean, even if we won by 1, right, the result later in the evening didn't go our way. I really did feel like we needed to win by 2 to have a chance to get in here with a later result. It doesn't matter. Point is, if we just focus on winning this game, even down by 1 goal, I wasn't really sold that we would even have a chance at equalizing here. Ultimately, we do get that goal in the 80-something minute, right? Our only shot on target of the game, by the way, which is insane when you think about this game being like a game where you have to win by 2, essentially.
When you think about what's on the line, yeah.
And not just what's on the line. Like, obviously the guys know what's on the line, but you're going into this game knowing that you need to win by multiple goals, right? Like one shot on target. Throughout the game, stats say I think we took 10 shots. I think it's generous. Some of those are just kind of like, throwing anything at the wind, right? I mean, I thought there would be a bit more in the chance creation department in this game, especially because we know like the attack has been actually pretty solid over the last several weeks, discounting that game in Rhode Island a few weeks ago, right? Our attack's been pretty solid. That's been what's actually put us in a position to get in here at all. The defense has been the big question mark, right? So I would have expected this game to have a bit more for us in the attack, and that just wasn't there. I think for, I'm not sure I would point to any like tactical error, right? I mean, the squad looks fine on paper, right? You said it yourself. I think this is the best 11 we could have put together on the night. I'm not going to be like Dom should have played Alex Rodriguez instead of Manu Arteaga, right? Like the kid's good, but I'm not expecting him to come in and like make a big difference in the playoff, in essentially a playoff game, right? Or Charlie Sharp, who, you know, has had a couple opportunities and kind of squandered them when he's had them. Like there wasn't anyone on the bench that would have been like, oh, you know, maybe I could point to Luis Alvarez because I really like what he has to offer in terms of, you know, making a goal happen from outside the box. But other than that, I'm not really being like even Leo Fernandes, who actually had a good look at the end of this game. Leo Fernandes, I wouldn't really be saying Leo Fernandes should have come in earlier, you know, for like a Paul Marie is where he typically plays. Later on in this game when we needed goals, he came on for Skinner, right? So not typically where he's played this year or last year. All that to say, like it wasn't there for us that evening, right? And it's where we've been all season, like you said. It's unfortunate. I can't point to many reasons why it wasn't there for us on Saturday, but we didn't look like we were fired up for it in the way the fans were, you know?
I think that's, if you compare it to the people who showed up for this one, that's a good way to look at it. While we're on the topic of the fans, I do want to throw this up from John Tyler, who's listening, and we'll get to your other comments, John, about retirements, but beforehand, hopefully when Pro-Rel is implemented, they reduce the number of teams in the playoffs. Detroit does not deserve to be in the playoffs, and frankly, it would have been a joke for us to get in. I that's a pretty good summary too, in all honesty. You think about where we've been all season, you think, again, this game reminded me of a lot of other ones that were pretty similar and were just poor overall, poor to watch, even. Something that Carlos mentioned. So what would have happened if we had made it in? Just probably the same thing. We would go to Louisville City and they would knock us right off the field. And I do expect that they'll do that to Detroit City. I'd be pretty shocked if somehow I'd be shocked if Detroit gets penalties out of that game, in all honesty.
Yeah. And, funnily enough, one of the better halves of soccer we played this year, or even, it wasn't even a half, it was a good 60 minutes of soccer, was in Louisville, right? So in that way, I guess you never really know what's going to happen. Ultimately, we still did lose that game, by the way. Like, we played a great hour of soccer, but we lost 2-1, right? So I think John makes a good point. When Louisville's on fire, they're probably going to tear into us, Detroit, Indy, like I said. And it's a good point. I mean, it's kind of one of the quirks of American soccer in general, right? Is this concept of the playoffs. It happens here, it happens in MLS, right? There's teams that get into I think they have like a play-in round now. I don't really keep up with MLS, I wouldn't know. But from what I saw, there was like a play-in round now. And like those are teams that, could be doing even worse than like the Rowdies comparatively, right? At that level, and somehow sneak into playoffs. So it's weird, it's quirky, it's what we have, and I don't think that'll change for the foreseeable future because we love our playoffs in American sports. So for better or worse, I think that's here to stay, even with Pro-Rel. But I think it's a good point because I think, calling it a joke that the Rowdies get into the playoffs on the season we've had, I think is an apt description for what that would have been. And if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching this on Twitter or X, I guess, continue the comments. I appreciate the feedback and then the thoughts and conversation here, because I think there's so many ways we could take this, right? And, talk about specific players, and we talk about the team as a whole. But it's, like I said, it's so weird to me to talk about specific players that we know are probably not coming back next year, right? Like, for example, James, the goal scorer for the Rowdies on this night, Rubens Pasillas, has had if you ignore everything else, which is hard to do, if you ignore the amount of losses we've had, if you ignore the season we've had, if you ignore like where we are on the table, Rubens Pasillas has had a year that would have most people talking about him. You know what I mean? Like, he has had a year that has him scoring what? Let me pull up the numbers here. So
14 goals in the league, at least. We know that.
Yeah, 14 goals in the league with, well, I have the number here. I have the number. Don't leave yet. 14 goals in the league, 3 goals in the USL Cup, and yeah, that's it. So 17 goals on the year. That's great. You know, like that's kind of where you want a striker to be on a top team. And despite all of that, I feel like I've criticized Woobens Pacias a lot this year. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's so interesting how like the narrative is switched up when your team is winning, because I still, you know, goal scoring wise, which is his main job, 17 goals. That's so impressive, right? But I feel like there was so many moments this year where it could have been so much more, right? I feel like we still didn't get the full Woobens Pacias.
I think that there were a lot of games that looked like, let's say, the first 80 minutes of this particular one from the weekend.
Yeah, right. That's a great way to describe it, right? Like maybe, you know, out of the game for 80 minutes and then kind of find a goal out of nowhere. He has incredible talent to do that. I feel like a lot of these 18 goals were goals that kind of come out of nowhere, right? Put your head down, take on 3 guys and score a goal. Next thing you know, the Rowdies are on the board, but by the time we score, it's 3-1. The other team's winning, right? The term people like to use is garbage time. I feel that's always a little harsh, garbage time. But that's kind of the idea, right? Like, I feel like we've scored a lot of goals, but as a team, we've just been behind. So I bring up Woobs as an example because great year in that statistic, right? In the goal scoring department. But like, it's a funny thing thinking about how we're going to have to talk about Woobs this offseason when we know he's probably not coming back. It's a lone player. Same thing with Paul Marie, right? Paul Marie is on loan. Who knows? Maybe there's an opportunity to sign either one of those. Who knows if they want to be here, right? I'm not sure like if it's super desirable to be on the team that you just finished in 10th place with. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to do that, like, especially with just a loan.
And also, just while we're on it, based on their production, if you are somebody who is if you're after trophies, if you're after something that's a little more prestigious, both of those two that you just named, Pacias and Marie, probably have the background, especially in USL Championship now, to be able to play for, let's say, a team that is in that upper echelon. Maybe if he's on loan from San Jose, Paul Marie might consider a team like Sacramento, who made it into a top 2, top 3, whatever it was, playoff position. So these are also considerations that you have when you're at this point. You obviously had end the season when the way that you do, and there were a bunch of good games before then. But yeah, there are multiple things to take into consideration before you make your next decision for a contract.
Yeah. Who knows, right? This is all kind of just like talking out of our behinds at this point. You know, there are so many personal considerations. What do players want? Are there players on this roster that, just don't want to be here, right? I think we've taken for granted the fact that so much of our core has remained intact over the year, right? And now this is kind of drifting into the off-season talk, and I'm not meaning to do that, but I think it's an important kind of like bow to tie here at the end of this game, right? I think we've taken for granted that so much of our core has remained intact over the last, let's say, 6 years, right? From that the beginning of like the Neil Collins era, middle of 2018, starting really in 2019, right? By the way, 2018, the last time we didn't make the playoffs. Fun fact. So much of that core has been here for a while, right? In 2020, we got Lasso. In 2017, we had Leo Fernandes, who stuck around for so long. We picked up Guenzati, I believe, that same year, who stuck around with us until 23, right? Just some of the big names, and that's excluding the Lewis Hiltons, who have been such a crucial name in the midfield. The Guillen, the Wyke for the last several years. Jordan Scarlett was with us for many years and part of those big teams in the back line. Who else? Guillen. Did I say Guillen already? Right? Like there's so many guys like that, and I'm probably missing a couple off the dome because I'm just talking right now.
Right.
Who have been part of this core for so long. Who it's almost like expected, I think, from our perspective, that if you're here with the Rowdies, like you want to be here, like you want to be here long term because this is a destination, and I stand by that. I do believe that's the case. The Rowdies are a massive brand at this level, by all accounts, a well-run organization who takes care of their players. And we'll see what that looks like in the new ownership, but I would expect that to continue, right? So, but I do think we've taken that for granted. After a season like this, with several players on loan, several players are here for the first time, and this is their first exposure to the Rowdies. They're seeing stands that are half full at best for a majority of the year. You're losing a lot of games. It doesn't seem like an appealing quality, right? Or an appealing place to be, I would imagine. If you're a young player and you want to, have big dreams and you're thinking about the future of your career. I still think this club's a destination club, but it probably didn't look like that to some players on the squad this year, right? So we'll see what the offseason has in store for us, James. I don't know if I'm kind of talking out of my behind or if that makes sense to you. We can save the talk about who we would like to keep, who we think should go for later on in the offseason. But I think to refocus it back on this game, like I said, I'm not even sure it's worth talking about individual performances just because, like I said, there's going to be a lot of folks that don't come back next year. I'll mention, obviously, Wubin's got the goal. I think Paul Marie had a fine game if we're just breaking down performances a little bit. Mendez, I think, had a fine game too. Nothing to write home about, but he was involved in the few chances we did create. And I think overall, I will say our back line, and I think the defensive effort from midfield overall, I think was solid in this game. And it's part of the reason why Detroit was only able to score that one goal. I think, like I said, a deflection, right? Overall, defensively, an improvement. But again, I don't even really care to call it an improvement at this point because the season's over, right? I'm almost like tempted to just keep talking about, the offseason and who we should go pick up and sign. But I'm saying, I'm going to zip up my mouth. I'm going to throw away the key so we can talk about wish lists and everything later on this year. James, anything else to mention in this game? Like there really wasn't a lot to talk about. I thought the most important thing to highlight was the attendance, closing out the year strong. We'll talk about Leo and Lasso a bit more because I think that was the big occasion of the night. Maybe here's a question for you, James, to kind of start to wrap up talking about this game. I was thinking about this. I was talking with my girlfriend about this, who's an FC Cincinnati fan, having a great year in MLS. Like I was watching the Columbus Crew versus Cincinnati game for a little bit yesterday. For them, great team, right? They have big expectations for the year. We started the year with big expectations. On paper, a great roster. At the beginning of the year, we talked, and this is true. You can go back and listen to the early, episodes here. I can remember jokingly commenting like if we missed up, where are we expecting ourselves to finish? And I was like, oh, maybe second, third, right? Like, I think if we, fell towards the bottom of the playoffs, it would be a disappointment. I think if somehow, and I'm like jokingly saying if we missed the playoffs, that would be, catastrophic. That'd be horrible. Like, there's no way that happens. Obviously, here we are, right? So I think we can call it a failure of a year. We can talk about the recap more later on of the year, but we have things to look forward to, right? At the end of this game, James, I won't say I was sad. Like I said, I don't think there was a lot of hope for us in the Louisville game. What was your immediate emotion, thoughts after a game like this where, the finality of the season hits you? Because I get reflective. That's how I get. Usually I would get sad in a playoff loss or mad. This game, I was over it pretty quickly. I was more happy to see Leo and Lasso have like a wholesome last few moments at Al Lang Stadium as players. What were your immediate emotions, let's say? And again, this is a question for anybody listening as well. I'm curious what people were feeling like at the end of this game.
My thoughts for this one were, in all honesty, so like I said, I was at an event and I was up in Atlanta for that. And I was trying to keep track of the score, amongst everything going on, and just keep checking my phone. Like, okay, no goals yet. Oh, Detroit City's leading. Okay, what are we? And when we leveled, and it was already after the 80th minute, I did, Carlos, you said that you thought that we were done when Detroit scored. I think that that's probably relatively close to where I was, but when we only scored again in the 80th, I didn't. I think that's when I kind of felt it, and afterwards, it was just like, well, that's probably where this was always headed. We had high hopes. You, me, and Eureka, all three of us predicted a win ahead of the game when we previewed it last week.
Yeah.
So you can't fault us for expecting this, but afterwards, I felt like that was probably where it had been headed all along, I guess. And it was kind of a resignation, I suppose, just resignation to the fact of it. And I didn't enjoy, obviously, that we were out of the playoffs, but truly, I said this at some point already in this episode, and I've said it probably elsewhere in other episodes or online, but would we have truly deserved to make the playoffs in 2025 over the when you take into consideration the way that we've played and all the points that we've dropped and all of the 2-5-0 losses? I think that this is sad to say, but I do think that this is a reflection of where the season was, and I do think that this is a reflection of where the team was over the course of the season. I'm hesitant to even later on, not tonight, but later on, to do individual reviews of players, because what are we going to say? How many are we going to give positive reviews to? I think maybe, I don't know, a couple of players, sure, but a couple of those that I'm already thinking of were people who are only here for a couple of months. How do you give somebody an A+ when they were there for 2-3 months? They obviously did a very good job within those 2-3 months, the players that I'm thinking of. But can I give Paul Marie an A+ for 2025? I don't know. Anyway, it's just difficult. So yeah, that's where I was. It was a resignation. That's where the Rowdies have been for the vast majority of 2025. And I guess, as sad as it is, as shitty as it feels, it is fitting that that was the performance that we went out on.
Yeah. I wonder how Cammy McPherson's doing these days.
I don't know where he is in the world. So
I'm gonna check this. Hold on. Cammy McPherson is playing for, and I know like someone who is from the UK, or James, you're Scottish, right? You're gonna get mad at me for how I pronounce this because I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. Like Greenock Morton. Is it Greenock? Is it Greenock or something like that? Greenock.
I think that they do say Greenock, but it's not. We don't really have to worry about it too much. In all honesty, I mess up quite a few Scottish pronunciations until I hear one of them say it, and then I'm like, oh, somehow I've misread every single Scottish name that isn't very, very straightforward. So it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. There's some players who played a couple of games for us earlier in the year, and we just never really saw them again. Nate Worth, obviously, we sent him out on loan. That's a name you might have even forgotten about. It's been a long time since we saw him on the field. It's felt like a long year. I mean, even thinking about the name Cammy McPherson feels like it was seasons ago.
It does.
Right? It's been a long year.
So I think Cammy McPherson is going to be one of those great pull kind of names down the line.
Absolutely. I love, like, that's my favorite thing to do is and I do this with like any sport. I just sit down with my friends and think about random pulls I can think of. That's a great pull right there, James. Saying Cammy McPherson's gonna be a great pull is a great pull. I'll give you another great pull right now. Deshaun Brown, 2017 striker.
I love me Deshaun Brown. I was actually a fan of his all the way back from college. So
absolute dog. I loved seeing him in his like 15 games for the Rowdies. That guy was awesome. Okay. We can do a whole episode where we just rattle off random Rowdies players to see who goes longer. That'd be a great thing.
I wonder, I bet you that would get quite a bit of engagement.
Yeah. Let's take an hour to just sit on this podcast and throw out random Rowdies players with people in the comments until we run out. Let's go for like until we run out. That's a good off-season episode idea. Catching up with like, I don't know, Diakite. I forgot his first name. Pape Diakite.
Yeah.
Remember him?
Yeah.
Let's catch up with him, see how he's doing. Okay. That's the season. Folks, 2025 is coming to a close in all the important ways, being the Tampa Bay Rowdies. It's been a weird year. We have so much offseason to break it down. We have more offseason than we would like to break it down, if anything, right? In a weird way, I'm glad it's over. I've never really said that before. Maybe in 2018. In 2018, I was actually glad it's over as well.
Yeah.
So Neil Collins could have a full year. And look, there's a lot of parallels, right? Neil takes over halfway through the year, right? Dom takes over halfway through the year.
And obviously a pretty underwhelming end to that season too.
Super underwhelming. And back then we were like, okay, well, half a season, then let's give them a full season. And after that, like, things took off, right? So there's so much hope for next year. New owners. Is that the year the Rays took over too? I want to like that.
That's a good question. I'm not sure offhand.
I want to say, Eureka, if you're not doing anything in the background, this is a good question. That would be another parallel to throw in there, because there's some similarities here. Obviously, last year we missed the playoffs. Last year, coach took over, obviously halfway through the year. There's hope for next year. There's hope for next year, right? We have new owners now. I guess the same owners, it's the Rays, but the Rays have new owners. You get what I'm saying, right? I'm glad it's over, frankly. I think there's a lot to be excited about. And I think there's a lot of cool stuff to talk about this offseason. So, James, let's close the chapter on the Rowdies 2025 season. We made it. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. There's still more to talk about in this podcast. Don't leave. It sounded like we were ending. Not yet. James, man of the match for this one. I don't really throw a name out there.
I went with Danny Crisostomo again. I think that the central midfield was one of the brighter spots in this game, although it wasn't bright. It was brighter than the rest. But yeah, so I don't know. It was hard. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really have anybody. Like I would like to say the fans for showing out. Just incredible end to the year. In a year where we've struggled, where we frankly as a fan base haven't really shown up in the way I would have liked us to show up, and in a year where obviously we're down. I would like to see full stands throughout the year, but what a great way to end the year in the stands.
Yeah.
Sold out, final game of the year, last hoorah. Truly, I think I think that's a really important aspect to this game. Ending the season like that, I think that's good. Leave people with a good taste in their mouth and thinking about, getting season tickets for March, because if you went to that game and there was 3,000 people there and we went out like that, I honestly think that affects, season ticket holders and ticket sales. I think one good game like that to close out the year, I think is helpful. I'll say the fans plus like Alex Mendez, I guess. I don't know. He had a fun game. Whatever. Let's move on, James. 2025, close the chapter. Next page. Next page, by the way, is a shameless plug to check out the shop.rblrsports.com shop. Because, James, liking and subscribing to this podcast, absolutely free, and you absolutely should do that on all the platforms you get your podcasts. But if you want some new threads, of course, Rowdy season's coming to a close. You want to look ahead to March or April, or you want to support your other Tampa Bay sports teams, you can get some cool merch at the shop.rblrsports.com shop. Some great stuff over there. You can use promo code COYR for 10% off your order, James. Not insignificant. That's some good money. Go ahead, check it out, get some cool gear, and we'll see you in your RBLR gear at Al Lang in March or April or maybe February if they do preseason games. Who knows? Let's bring back the Suncoast Invitational. That was fun.
I would like that.
James, we'll talk about these fascinating USL playoffs as the season progresses over the next few weeks. Let's just mention really quickly the actual matchups here. I told you who's into the playoffs. Obviously, it's gonna be first place versus eighth place, first place versus eighth place, second versus seventh, and so on and so on. Tulsa versus the Colorado Springs Switchbacks is your first matchup out west, followed by El Paso Locomotive and Phoenix Rising. New Mexico United versus San Antonio, and of course Neil Collins is Sacramento versus Orange County SC. In the East, you have Louisville City versus Detroit City, Pittsburgh versus Hartford, Hartford having a great year, of course. North Carolina FC versus Loudoun will be a sneaky good match. And Charleston versus Rhode Island FC, which I also think could be an interesting one to watch. Obviously after that, you'll have your next round, finals, whatever. I think this will be an interesting playoffs. I think there's some really cool storylines, which we can take the next few weeks to talk about and break down and, choose our teams to keep an eye on. James, I'll ask you, thinking about these games, is there one team that I'll ask you, is there one team that you would prefer win? And then is there one team that you think is going to win? Or
okay, well, I mean, I don't, you mentioned this earlier. I really don't know how anybody thinks someone other than Louisville City is going to win. So that would be, I think that they'll win. Somebody that I want to win, I would say, so the obvious answer for that one is Sacramento because of Neil Collins. But in all honesty, I kind of think I want to see Tulsa take this. I think I want to see Tulsa take this because Tulsa is it's an interesting organization. They have some good people involved there, individual players, and they've had staff over the last 2-3 years that trying different things, all that kind of stuff. So I think that Tulsa needs to get a little bit more interest in the club locally, so that they can build up the base and hopefully get out of a baseball stadium. That would be nice. So I'm going to go with Tulsa. That's going to be my option. Sacramento, they've got in terms of the USL Championship, obviously, they've got all the money in the world. They're building a stadium. They already probably have, I don't know this, but I think that they have pretty good training facilities. They've obviously got a very good coach. I think anybody here is going to agree with me on that one. So, instead of Sacramento, I'm going to say Tulsa.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I agree. I think Louisville City's going to win, right? Obviously, even Charleston, the second place team in the East, is a great team. But I think Louisville has just proven to be so consistent over the course of this year. It's kind of ridiculous. By the way, even when they haven't had to be, like, they could have dropped off and been comfortably in first place still. Like, it's kind of crazy that they've kept this up throughout the entire season. But, good for them. Team I would like to see make it to the final and potentially win. I think Hartford has a cool argument to be my team to watch just because of the year they've had kind of out of nowhere. Turning it around right after that loss to us. I think truly the Rowdies game had an impact on them, apparently. Won the Jägermeister Cup. I think it'd be cool to see a team pull a double in one of the first opportunities to be able to do so. So actually, yeah. True. I think that would be a cool thing to keep an eye on. I think it'll be hard for them to overcome Louisville, but we'll see. I think it'll be hard for anybody to do that. I think New Mexico is a fun organization as well. Great fan base that I think would be a cool team to get a championship. So plenty of cool teams to watch. I think your argument for Tulsa kind of applies for North Carolina FC as well, in my opinion. I think North Carolina needs an injection of passion because they've been a little lackluster in the last few years. I think it'd be an exciting year for them to get that as well. Yeah. So some good stories. We'll keep an eye on this. Those will be our predictions, I guess, officially. James, do you want to give a prediction for who you think is going to come out of the West to play Louisville and ultimately lose, I guess?
Well, my prediction on who it would be is probably Sacramento. I do honestly think Sacramento will do it. But like I said earlier, I would probably prefer to see Tulsa.
Yeah. I haven't kept up a ton with the Western Conference, but the games I have seen of Tulsa, like, I don't know how they're in first place. Like, it doesn't seem like a particularly scary team to play, to be honest.
Right.
The home field advantage they have is probably a part of it too. It's a weird place to play and they've gotten used to it. But I think I'm going to pick I think New Mexico. I'll go with New Mexico again. I think it'll be New Mexico versus Louisville in the final. But you're right. Louisville is ridiculous. And I think they'll come out with the win here in the championship. So those are official RBLR sports predictions. I hope Louisville doesn't win. I'm kind of tired of them, to be fair. Yeah. And I don't, it's nothing personal. Let's spread the wealth a little bit. although I'm sure if I was in their shoes, I would consider this a horrible take, and let's keep the wealth with my team. But, I digress. James, anything else in the playoffs? We'll talk about this as we continue over the next few weeks, but anything to mention here?
Nope, I think that we are all good on the playoffs for the time being. Obviously, we'll revisit it as we go, and we can probably give a little bit more of a background on USL League One in the future too. But beforehand, Carlos, there's no reason to do that right now because we actually need to focus on the last big thing here, and this is Leo Fernandes and Fernandes Lasso. So that was our. So you have one more bullet point that we'll get to, so no problem there. But quick shout out from the fans here. I think you guys did a very good job of making the disappointment of the season without swearing. Well, I did throw one in there, so we'll just ignore that one, and then we'll move on to
that one
the
doesn't
last
count.
bit.
That's not a real swear word. That doesn't count.
Yeah, exactly. We'll move on to the last bit, which specifically has to do with the retirement. So John mentioned earlier, I know Leo was going to retire regardless of the coach, but the Lasso decision surprised me. Is this because the coach did not have him in his plans? Followed up, I say this because Leo has never been the same since his injury, but Lasso looked like a guy who could still hang at this level. We don't actually know that at this point. I don't know if that was something, if that's a conversation that they've had. In all honesty, I do feel like mostly those conversations are held off until after the season. I don't know that. It's entirely possible, and maybe we'll hear about that in the future. But I couldn't tell you whether or not anybody has had a particular conversation with either Leo or Lasso. But Leo Fernandes, Fernandes Lasso, these are two local legends. Leo Fernandes has been here since he moved here. Fernandes Lasso, this is his second stint because he spent a year in Sweden, in the first division in Sweden, and I don't think anybody begrudged him that one. He had done so well for us previously, and I think he wanted one more shot at the top division, whether that was the US or obviously over somewhere in Europe, and he found a club in Sweden that was willing to give him a chance. It didn't work out there, and as far as I'm aware, supposedly the Swedish fans, or at least those clubs fans, don't have the fondest memories, but that's neither here nor there for us in Florida. That really doesn't matter to me. Fernandes Lasso is a Rowdies legend, and he's an extremely charismatic guy. Talking to him, he always makes time for fans, and Leo is too. Leo will sit and take pictures with kids after games for ages, and they'll sit. There seemingly is an endless number of kids at the games, and they always know where to line up in between the two dugouts where now the two teams come out from their locker rooms, and which have been turned into suites for fan groups. But they will both sit there and they'll talk to the kids and they'll sign things and they'll give them little tips and pointers. They're always guys who want to talk to you after the game, and they talk to Eureka after this past game. I think that both of those are up on our social medias if you would like to watch them. I would recommend watching them. It's a good like goodbye to both Leo and Lasso, but they talk about what it meant to be with the Rowdies, all of that stuff that you usually get into in retirement. But it's not just platitudes. Sometimes in press conferences you kind of just get a lot of the same stuff. I really think that these are better interviews because the moment meant so much. So I would just recommend, again, check out our social media so that you can see those particular parts of the post-game press conference, and you can see Leo Fernandes and Fernandes Lasso doing their last bit with the club, or their last bit as players with the club. We don't know what the future holds right now.
Yeah, and those are on Instagram, by the way. Eureka did a great job of posting those to our RBLR Sports account on Instagram. There's also an interview, post game with Dom Casciato as well. It's at RBLR Rowdies on Instagram. So go ahead, check it out. Drop a follow if you haven't followed. Just over 2,000 followers recently, so that's fun. But you can check out the really emotional conversation, especially with Forrest, who has never been afraid to show the emotions on his part.
Yeah.
I mean, so many things we could say about Forrest Lasso and Leo Fernandez. It's almost worth like an entire episode. You know what I mean? Just on individually on both of those guys. James, like Lasso joins us in 2020 and is immediately part of one of the most incredible back lines that this league has ever seen.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
2020 and 2021 back line with him and Guillen and Jordan Scarlett was ridiculous. I mean, that was an incredible back line. Had an insane streak of shutouts. I don't even remember. And it wasn't anything new to him. He was already at that point a one-time USL Defender of the Year.
Yep.
With was it Cincinnati or Charleston?
I believe Cincinnati.
When he won the Defender of the Year, yeah. So he was already a one-time USL Defender of the Year at that point. Followed it up with 2 more of those honors with the Tampa Bay Rowdies, making him the most decorated defender in USL Championship history. Just super, super insane last few years. I think John makes a good point. Like physically, it looks like he maybe had a couple more years left in him. I think what we forget is that he had that really, really serious ACL injury.
Yes.
That ended his entire season last year. Despite that, like that's a long road to recovery. He's on the back end of his career, like already as is. Then you have the ACL tear, comes back from that, and eventually hits the 100 appearance club with the Rowdies in May. Hits over 200 career appearances in the USL later on in the season. He's had a long career, all things considered. And if you read the press release / article from the Rowdies website, it seems more. It seems like a very personal decision, right? Like it's all about his family, like wanting to spend more time with the family after a great career in the world of soccer, right? Soccer has been everything to me. It's always overfilled my cup. It's given me more than I could ever imagine. It's allowing me to turn my dream into reality. Like it seems like it was all just kind of culminating in this season for him, right? You know, he has his kids now. Like it seems like it's a family, personal decision. So all the respect in the world to Forrest Lasso for an incredible career, just with the Rowdies. But even before that, like I said, USL Defender of the Year with Cincinnati and, you know, good run with Charleston. I think I'm happy to confidently say that Forrest Lasso will be remembered as a Tampa Bay Rowdy before any of the other teams because of his success here. Just incredible, incredible stuff. Nobody could beat this guy in the air. Like, I think we'll be talking about him for a very, very, very long time when it comes to some of the best defenders that have ever played for the Rowdies. So incredible career for him. And I just spent all the time talking about Forrest Lasso, and we haven't even talked about Leo yet. You know what I mean? Like, it's so insane that we had 2 of these back-to-back retirements on the same night, James. Like, this is incredible. And by the way, Guenzati was on the field there too. Like, it was chef's kiss to have Sebastian Guenzati there to celebrate the end of the season, end of Leo Fernandez and Forrest Lasso's career as well, because obviously he was on the bench for Detroit. But you could see him sharing the emotion with Leo. They joined the Rowdies together in that 2017 season. Both came from the Cosmos that year, and both of them settled in incredibly. We've talked so much about Guenzati. We did our tribute to him when he left for Indy a couple seasons ago. But they were, 2 peas in a pod at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Leo had such an incredible career with the squad, James. I listened to your bit with Kartik on Beyond the 90. I think you talked about it really, really well. Club legend in not just a, like Rowdy's legend kind of way, but like truly, like culturally, obviously statistically on the field. I think even more importantly, the cultural aspect he brought to this club was incredible. I had no clue he'd be such an important role when he signed with us. And back then I was like, oh, like the Cosmos player, like, oh, like he played for the Cosmos. Like, and I was beefing with the Cosmos back then. Who knew he would become, I think, the face of this organization for the last almost 10 years. That's incredible. That's incredible. What a legend. What a guy. The numbers don't do him justice. Obviously MVP, Golden Boot. Like, he was incredible. He started playing as a wingback, and all of a sudden Neil's like, actually, I think you'd be good in the midfield and the attacking role. And all of a sudden he's breaking records, like, in the second half of his career. Like, incredible. I have so many things to say about Leo. He's been so personable. He's been such an incredible person to have on the Rowdies. He's been the nicest guy in the world to me. When he joined the Rowdies, I was the 2017, right? I was 15 when he joined the Rowdies. Like, that's insane to me. I told him, like, because I saw him, earlier on in the year, and we were talking about the season and his career, and I shot him a text. I'm like, dude, like, you have literally been on the Rowdies like throughout my entire high school life, my college life, and into the adult professional world. Like, you, for me, like, you are the Rowdies, dude.
Right.
Like, I grew up, and you've been the Rowdies this entire time for me. Like, I so much respect for him personally, and just so much love for him personally. Just an incredible guy, and I think truly, like, has been the face of the Rowdies for me and for so many people over the last, what is that? 8 years, almost 9 years. I loved it. I was so happy he had like a perfect emotional, just a happy send off. Would have been happier, I guess, with the win. But man, like, he was there with his kids, with his wife, his lovely wife, who I met in Louisville when I made it to the conference championship back in 2020. Just an incredible family. Like, awesome guy. This monologue of just talking from my heart, like, doesn't do it justice. I love Leo Fernandes so much as a person, as a player, as an icon of this club. I think I can talk about him forever. So if he comes across this for whatever reason, Leo, I freaking love you, dude. Like, you have seen me grow up literally into this professional, adult world, and you've been the Rowdies for me. So a huge thank you from Carlos to Leo for whatever that's worth, for being just an absolute legend. And again, we're not even talking about him on the field. Like, I didn't really talk about his accomplishments on the field, but MVP, Golden Boot, just insane. The talent was on another level, James.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to be doing pretty well to earn that award, but I think that actually doing individual episodes on Fernandes Lasso and Leo Fernandes, maybe we do that. Maybe we just do an expanded one where we only talk about those two.
Yeah.
But we'll see how the rest of the offseason plays out, because they deserve more time. They've obviously given the Rowdies I don't know how much time of their lives at this point. So we could probably offer to cover them a little bit more than what we've done so far. And I think that's a good idea.
And by the way, we don't know what this entails, but we know that Leo's sticking around the club, right? That was in the press, announcement. So that made me so happy personally, right? Leo and Lasso, both of these guys need to be here forever in my eyes. Like, I know you guys have personal lives and families everywhere. Like, don't care. You guys are in Tampa forever, or you're stuck. Tampa Bay, St. Pete, right? Wherever the Rowdies are in the Tampa Bay area, they have to be there for the rest of their lives. They committed to it. They didn't know when they signed it, but it was actually a lifetime contract. So I'm happy to know that Leo's going to be in some sort of role with the Rowdies going forward. Who knows what that is? My guess, if I can throw a guess out there, we heard about the Rowdies academy situation, Rowdies U23. What would we call it? Rowdies U20, Rowdies B, I forgot what it was, coming online.
Yeah.
My guess is he jumps into the world of coaching. He's launched a company where he's helped kind of start coaching at the younger levels. I would imagine maybe that's a natural transition. Who knows? I'm speculating. Don't take it from me. I have no info. I have nothing. I'm just talking out of my behind. But like you said, both these guys deserve full episode, longer conversation in the off season. But like I said, great crowd to send them off into retirement this past Saturday. So legends.
All right. Well, with that, Carlos, I think the last bullet point is yours, and then we can get out of here.
I'm just going to throw this in here because I mentioned it last week too. Liga de Quito, obviously the team I follow in Ecuador, has been on an insane Cinderella type of run this year. They've knocked out some of the biggest Brazilian teams. They are in the semifinals of the Copa Libertadores, which, if you don't know, is the Champions League essentially of South America. And they're playing against a squad that has the highest roster value in Latin America, Palmeiras, who has a squad value of some 200, I want to say 220, 230 euros, something like that, some insane amount. I don't know why it's in euros. I use Transfer Market. Liga squad value for anybody that cares is some like 20 million. It's an insane run. They actually won the first leg in Quito 3-0. Now they have to go to one of the hardest places to play in all of Latin America, in Sao Paulo against Palmeiras, and hold on to a 3-0 lead. If you can watch it on Thursday, it's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be the pinnacle of soccer, I think. Kind of what makes it all, so fascinating to me to watch. The fans, the intensity on the field, it's going to be awesome. So Thursday night, check it out. There'll be some great soccer to watch for your evening viewing. James, that's it. Let's wrap it up.
All right. That is it, folks. Thank you for joining us. We always appreciate when you do. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere. Anywhere you are, that's where we are as well. I am mostly on Twitter, however. If you'd like to get at me, that's at RBLR James K. You can use the hashtag AskRBLR, or you can reach Carlos.
At Carlos TPA10 on Twitter. Let's talk about the Rowdies. There's still a lot to talk about. Let's talk about the USL playoffs going on. I think we'll have an offseason full of Rowdies news. So let's stay in touch over the offseason, James. We'll keep doing this show every week. We'll find things to talk about: Rowdies, USL, League One. So follow me on Twitter, and we'll keep the conversation going.
There we go. Like and subscribe to our podcast. You can get the full experience on YouTube if you'd like, or if you just want to listen, no problem. We're also on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Again, wherever you are, we are too. So for a whole season in the books, but surely lots of good to come in the future. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.